Wrestling fans, the following contest, it is for Three Falls.
It is the Three Falls Podcast with your hosts, Sharpshooter Derek Schluter,
The best there is!
Matt Professor Pepper,
That's a spoiler!
and wrestling enthusiast, Michael Punker.
And away we go.
1, 2, 3!
Pull up a chair, turn up the volume, sit back with a beverage, and listen to your favorite podcast as your hosts, Derek and Matt, talk wrestling. This is the Three Falls Podcast. I'm Derek, joined, as always, with Professor Matt Pepper. Matt, give us your best Ultimate Warrior impression. Gesundheit.
I can never do that snarl thing. I don't even know what you call it.
I've heard you snore.
Ooh.
So yes, you can do that snarl.
Not anymore. Been to the sleep clinic. Life is good.
All right. Well, we have a really good show for you this week because it's going to be a little different than normal. We're going to focus a lot on the Ultimate Warrior because this past week the A&E biography as well as the Dark Side of the Ring episode aired, and I know what I can speak for you, Matt, when I say that me and you were both huge Ultimate Warriors, Little Warriors, whatever you will call them. When we were a kid, we were big fans, and you know, we have a lot to say on this. So we'll review both of them. We'll go into detail. And we will also talk about our thoughts on The Ultimate Warrior. I don't know if we will talk about any other kind of wrestling, because guess what? I did not watch anything else. Did you watch anything, Matt?
Yeah, I watched some of AEW. I watched actually some of the UK show this week. Not really much else, although there was actually some good stuff that happened in wrestling. Even on Raw, believe it or not, that I missed this week.
All right. Well, I'll ask you about that a little after our review. And I guess we'll talk about the news. We'll hit some news items. There was some news this week. I don't know what has been going on. I know there was a few releases. I know AEW even had a release.
Yes. Let's start. I think one of the bigger news items this week was it came out that... I
know.
Go ahead.
Referee Aubry Edwards is getting her own action figure.
I did not have that on the hot news item this week. Yeah, good for her. First female referee to have an action figure, so that is topical, but that was not where I was going. I know
where you can go, but continue.
I was going to say, probably one of the bigger news items this week was that it came out that WWE has had talks with New Japan Pro Wrestling about a potential partnership. Nick Khan had put out a statement.
No. You mean Tony Khan and AEW?
No. Nick Khan.
Oh, see, from what I heard, Tony Khan was talking AEW. New Japan Pro Wrestling, but he had a liaison doing all the talking, and it was a member, Willie Urbina from his Spanish announce team. He was supposed to be like the go-between between New Japan and AEW.
Well, pretty well threw me off on this one.
What? What could have possibly happened that led to WWE and New Japan having talks?
All right, so the main thing here is apparently they've been talking the last couple months about a potential partnership, so it's been a lot of speculation on what that actually would mean. So basically, from what I gather, there's kind of a couple trains of thought on this. One obviously is talent exchange. We talked about before how WWE and a potential MLW partnership would see, talents that are getting feature time or they're looking to find something for them, could potentially work MLW. I think that would be the same with a New Japan type scenario. This isn't really new. WWE had partnerships with New Japan in the 70s and the 80s. If you watch any of the old MSG shows, you'll see Tiger Mask, Dynamite Kid, those kind of matches on their old shows. And then on the flip side of the talent exchange would be, I would imagine New Japan would have their young boys going on excursions, getting some face time in WWE. The other part of that possibly could be some
NXT New Japan Pro Wrestling?
I think that would be off the table if they're going to do a partnership with New Japan. Because my guess is they wanted to do an NXT in Japan, but that would obviously damage New Japan if they had gone that route. So my guess is this is probably what they're looking to do, especially on the New Japan side, to prevent that from happening. But I could see possibly some content from New Japan ending up on WWE Network / Peacock to get some exposure in the United States for some of their talent. The other thing that plays into this, obviously, it's funny, everything seems to come back to Daniel Bryan, because he's the one that put this out there in the first place, that he's been talking with WWE about working, being under contract but working in other places. And I would imagine he's at least part of the conversation if they're looking to do some kind of agreement with New Japan, because he's probably the perfect guy to work a lot of the New Japan talent. Do you have any thoughts on a potential partnership?
Well, I was just thinking other ways that we could see this partnership working out is that maybe WWE could use the Bullet Club name.
Well, that would be interesting.
Well, I know not Finn Balor. I was going to say, I know Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows are no longer with WWE. However, you do have Finn Balor, AJ Styles. I guess that's it. But I mean, you can always add more or bring in some of the Bullet Club members like Tama Tonga into WWE, since he, they have ties with Roman Reigns as well.
Well, he actually tweeted when that rumor came out. He said, "Guerrillas of Destiny versus the Bloodline."
Yeah, I would like to see that.
There are matches, and I know people will knock this, thinking that the WWE style won't work in New Japan. Come on, it's wrestling. There's
no, the WWE style would work with New Japan, because New Japan's a lot more slower, methodical than a lot of people. Like, I would favor that WWE is closer to New Japan style than AEW is.
I would say at least the top guys, because they can work that main event style that WWE has for sure. Yeah. I think the main difference is New Japan, obviously, it's a little more snug. And they're not as restricted with TV, so they have those longer matches. I think that's the two differences I would see with that. But I mean, there's a lot of possibilities there. Drew McIntyre put a tweet out. It was kind of funny because I think in storyline next week, he's facing Kofi Kingston, and he put out a tweet, but he did it in kind of weird sentences about fighting Kofi, but the way it went, the way that it spelled out was when you look at the first letter of each sentence, it spelled Okada.
Nice.
So I would think the talent would like that, especially like who knows what WWE's touring is going to be like, although they did announce some dates. I suspect it's probably not going to be touring like it was before. So that could be extra paydays for talent.
Now, I have something interesting to bring up that I'm not sure if you thought about.
Go ahead.
Where does this leave the New Japan US champion?
See,
do you know who that is?
Yeah, it's Jon Moxley.
Exactly.
Well,
Now, isn't that an interesting point?
There's definitely wrinkles in this, right? Because New Japan, I mean,
they have a relationship with Impact. I mean, FinJuice is the Impact champions.
Prior to this, like their recent working agreements, they were predominantly with Ring of Honor. I don't know what the relationship is there anymore. Then, obviously, they kind of crept into this whole AEW Impact partnership. So, we've seen, Moxley defend the U.S. title. FinJuice, like you said, they had Yuji Nagata on the show a couple weeks ago. I guess it depends on what the actual agreement is. Is it a handshake deal? See, that's the tough part. Is it
just for video library? Maybe,
who knows?
Like, we're jumping to conclusions here. This could be something as small as just using footage.
Could be. Because if you think about it, if you look at it that way, Impact's work with WWE.
Yeah.
Providing them footage.
Yeah.
I think what it is, truthfully, is some of the older kind of barriers with wrestling. They're more open to doing stuff.
Well, here's the thing.
Nick Khan obviously has a good track record in making money. And you've seen it in the 1 year that he's been with WWE. So I don't think he would put something out there if there wasn't a possibility to really be profitable and do something good with this.
And here's the thing, right? Like, everyone's so used of, like, the Monday Night War with WWE versus WCW.
Yep.
How, like, it's them versus them, blah, 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 blah. In reality, like, nowadays, wrestling's not so much like that.
No.
If they can work with other companies to further their own company, they will, in whatever they do. Like, it's not, we've seen it. We've seen Jericho on Stone Cold's podcast. We've seen CM Punk, even, who's not with a company I know, but, like, look, like, they brought him in, like, if it's good for whatever the business, if it'll make money, they'll do it. They'll do whatever they can. If it's same with New Japan, like, it's all of one big thing, right? Like, it's not really like competition, like people think it is, and they make it out to be.
The difference is, the big difference is just when you look at the Monday Night Wars, at its core, there was a personal and professional issue between the owners of those companies. And that started it, and then you had a lot of talent that weren't happy with the other sides over, releases or getting fired, or whatever the case is. And then you had pot shots between both sides, and that's really what it was. And it was a crowded market. There was two companies. Those were really the two places to work to make big money at the time. And like I said, it was a personal issue between the bosses. That's what happened. Today, all these companies outside of WWE pretty much need to work together in order to, maybe not necessarily keep their head above water, but to really kind of stay relevant in the market. That's kind of where we're at. And WWE, I mean, I don't think they really have hate with any company. They probably don't like things that AEW does, and I know AEW doesn't like things they do. But I think they realize the need to have another company that can pay talent, because you need to keep restocking the shelf. And that's what a partnership with New Japan could do, a partnership with MLW could do, and all of AEW's partnerships. People read too much into it. It's good if it happens.
All right. Well, what other news do you have for us this week? Because with that, it's a wait and see approach. I'm sure we'll have updates in the future.
Yeah, Tony Khan did a really odd promo based on that, but I want to try to forget about that. There was something else I was seeing.
Well, there was releases
yes.
in NXT. Have we talked about those yet? Did we talk about those last week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, we talked about those last week.
Well, there was more. I know there was behind the scenes releases.
So, there was the commentator releases this week on Raw. So, Adnan Virk had a very short stay as the Raw play-by-play announcer.
We hardly knew ye.
Very odd exit. He put out a statement that the schedule with his other jobs is making this tough, which, I mean, I don't really understand the statement. Because
he didn't know that Raw was actually every Monday night.
If that's the case, I'm not sure what to say. So he's gone. Now, they did hire, what's his name? Is it Smith? Something? Billy Smith? Is that his name?
In 6 weeks, he'll be gone.
So this guy came from the USA, or not USA, UFC. He was a analyst on UFC in the MMA world. So he actually didn't do play-by-play. So that's going to be an interesting hire, because as we know, the play-by-play, like anything commentary, is a tough job in WWE, because there is a great deal of pressure with that. So I'm curious on how he's going to do. Now, on that note, they also released Tom Phillips.
This one I was shocked at, because I like Tom Phillips.
I think of a lot of the newer play-by-play guys they've had over the years, he was one of the best ones.
Yeah, I really like them.
Because a lot of them come across kind of, not a lot of personality, or very hard to relate to. But I think he,
like you,
like me. But I think he did a good job. Like, he was the Raw play-by-play guy until they hired Adnan Virk. He was still employed, and then they hired Jimmy Smith, and now he's gone.
Jimmy Smith?
Jimmy Smith. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Bring some NYPD Blue to Monday Night Raw.
Yeah, I was sad with Tom Phillips, whatever his name is. I thought he was good. I don't know. I'm surprised.
Seemed to be well liked.
I know. Wasn't he doing NXT UK as well at one point? Or NXT?
He was. Like that? I think he did NXT for a little. He was there for a little while.
Yeah,
for sure. Although I do like Vic Joseph on NXT. I think he's.
I like Vic Joseph as well. Yeah.
But yeah, he was.
He looks like a mannequin, but other than that, he's pretty good.
Vic Joseph. He looks like he could step on the basketball court and dunk a ball. Like, he's.
Actually, wasn't there? I saw a picture of Tom Phillips actually after he was released. Someone posted it, and they're like, "Oh, we'll always have this." And I forget who he was interviewing, but he was basically doing the splits to look shorter than that person.
What? Doing the splits?
Not like full blown splits, but he was spreading his legs.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. Anyway, yeah. So it's a little bit of a revolving door there since WrestleMania.
And didn't someone get AEW this week?
So AEW released Willie Urbina, who was the Spanish, one of the Spanish announcers, which was a very strange story. So basically what happened, they had a lot that they do their live feed on Fight, and during a commercial break, they had, like, the mics were hot. So in the media world, a hot mic it's live. So they haven't shut it off. They haven't muted it. They haven't done anything.
We're live, pal.
We're live, pal. So basically what happened was, what's the other guy's name? Alex Abrahantes. He said to Willie Urbina, "Can you do the Hikaru Shida accent?" I think. And then he started talking in the stereotypical, type speak for Japanese people. And Thunder Rosa and Dasha kind of laughed, told him to stop, and it kept going. And then, like anything, it ended up on Twitter, and people were tagging Tony Khan, and then he was released the next day. So he, a very, very quick release off of commentary. Basically, it came off racially insensitive. So they quickly moved on based on that.
Here's the thing. You should never do that, period. Secondly, there's a lot of anti-Asian or Asian hate going on right now.
Yeah.
So especially, like, you should never do it, never, period. And on top of that, especially right now, where it's becoming apparent, like, there's been a spotlight on all the Asian hate that's going on in North America.
Yeah.
So I mean, very well so should he lose his job over this. Like, this would be not okay in any terms. I mean, imagine if someone were doing, like, you know, a Spanish accent mocking him or something, right? Like, it's not okay. Especially, like, you gotta also think, right? Like, Tony Khan is of Asian descent. Mm-hmm. Like, his dad, Shah Khan, as well as, like, you gotta think of, like, the world right now, like, where, like, a character like Apu has been banished from The Simpsons because, especially because of, like, the accent too, right? So I don't know. I'm just saying, like, come on, guy. Like, open your eyes to what's going on. You know?
I think where I have, and I agree with what you said, but in this particular instance where I do kind of have a problem with this situation is he was egged on to do that.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Like,
but here's the thing: if he was egged on to do it, it means he's been doing it before,
and it means that the person egging him on likes him doing that.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, so.
But what are you going to do? Fire your whole Spanish? I mean, if it comes down to it,
I'm just saying, like, if someone's asking him to do that, and then they're laughing about it, laughingly telling him this stuff, to me, this has happened, like, obviously it's at least happened once before. Yeah. And that's a part of a bigger problem, in my opinion. Now, it's a very unfortunate situation. I think the thing with,
I mean, here's the thing. This is what it boils down to. AEW needs quality control.
Oh, big time.
Like that's exactly where it boils down to. As much as you want, like, this guy gets fired and all that, that's not going to get rid of the overall problem. The overall problem is quality control. Okay, I've watched Botchamania, which, where am I going with this? I'll tell you. A regular clip on Botchamania is what's the guy with the mask? Excalibur and Taz.
Yeah.
And even sometimes Big Show or whatever from Dark and all that. And it's them doing commentary, and it's just like you wouldn't believe it. They're not, like, making fun of people, but, like, there's phony in, like, you wouldn't believe. Okay,
right.
If, like, you're getting paid to do this. This is not, like, you know, act professional. Like, act like you want to do this, right? You don't like it, don't do it. Go work somewhere else. Go do whatever you want to do. Like, go work somewhere else. It's just not here. If you're not going to show up and work, then you gotta be help. You know, but that's the thing. No one's holding these guys accountable for this.
Well, here's the thing. Like, who's directing these? Like, the Spanish team? Do they actually have, like, an audio director?
I don't know. That's the thing, right? I know the English, they usually do. I guess. I don't know how AEW is run, but I know, like, you know, doing this stuff that I've done and that we've done for TV, we know that the commentators can be fed in. and that
But
people's listening and directing them.
the stuff we've done primarily has been live to tape.
Yeah.
So you can and should review it in editing before you distribute it. So in a live to tape show, there should be no reason to ever have anything that would be deemed offensive go to air. When you're live, that's another story. But in this instance, they're on break, but they have live mics, and I don't know. Like, is nobody talking to them over the headset? Like, I'm not discrediting what happened here by any means, but at the end of the day, I mean, if my guess is this has been going on, and nobody's been paying attention to it, addressed it, and then it's embarrassing for them and the company because nobody's supervising that. Like, why? There should be that should never happen anyway, but that really shouldn't happen live over a mic. That's just they did the right thing because, like you said, especially in this era, I see the Stop Asian Hate campaign almost every day, and that's a real thing. So you cannot have that. But I still think this is part of a bigger problem. If you're getting egged on to do it, I don't know. Like,
yeah, I hear there should be probably repercussions for whoever
And listen, I'm not advocating people to get fired. But to me, like, when you listen to that, to me, there's more to that story.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say on that.
All right. Any other news you have for us this week?
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head.
No, I think those were the top news stories this week.
Oh, actually, not really so much a news story. One thing I just wanted to ask you about. I sent it to you earlier in the week. Did you see the promo with that Morrissey from Impact?
No, I haven't. Because here's the thing. When you send me sometimes, I'm at work, and I can't watch it when I'm at work because I don't have headphones.
I'm going to say this right now. That is one of the best promos I've heard on Impact Wrestling.
How long is it?
It's maybe 2 minutes.
Why don't you play it?
All right.
Why don't you play it for us?
I'm here with W. Morrissey for a very special sit-down interview. W. Morrissey, thank you very much for joining me. I'm very happy to have you today.
Oh, you're happy to have me here. Seems like everybody around here and everybody in this industry, they're extremely happy when the cameras are rolling. They're so happy to be here and to work here, and they'll be nice to everybody's face. Like, I'm going to be nice to your face, and then I'll go bury you behind your back right after the cameras stop rolling. Pretty much everybody in this industry, fake, phony, and they'll be nice to your face. But once those cameras stop rolling, once you walk away, they'll bury you to everybody they can. And then I'm sure you're happy to have me here, and I can sit here and say to you, I'm happy to be here. But to be quite honest, I'm not happy to be here, and I don't care if it's you sitting here or somebody else or nobody. All I care about is people hearing what I have to say.
Well, it seems that you have a very strong perspective on the wrestling business. Some may even call it bitterness.
Some may say bitter, but I'd say realistic. Every time that I've fallen down in this industry, every time that something bad has happened to me, that I made headlines for all the wrong reasons, people kicked me while I was down. When I had a seizure in front of 1,500 people in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, those fans that love us and adore us, you know what they did? They took out their phones, and instead of dialing 911, they recorded it and put it on YouTube. And then everybody in the world gets to watch me at my most vulnerable point. And my former coworkers, people that are here behind the scenes, people that are in this locker room, you know what they did when they saw that video? When I was at my lowest point, they laughed at me. And nobody reached out. People that I thought were my friends, they didn't even reach out. Not even a text, not a phone call. Hey man, how you doing? And for 3 years, nobody contacted me. And then lo and behold, when I come back to wrestling, all those same people that hadn't talked to me in years, all of them reached out. Hey man, you look great. So happy to see you back. I always knew that you were going to come back strong. You know why they did that? They want to know that they have that powerful piece on their side. When I make it to the top of this industry, when I make it to the top of this company, those people, they want to be on my team. So they reach out and they buddy. Because they want to be my friend now. Because I'm doing great.
You have certainly had a long and intense experience, but when I look at the Impact locker room, I do see friends. You've had some issues with Willie Mack at Under Siege, and his best friend, Rick Swann.
His best friend, Rick Swann? Yeah, they're not friends. Rick Swann did that because that's what the people want. Rick Swann wants the adulation of all the fans out there, like everybody else in this industry. He needs that validation to boost his ego. It has nothing to do with friendships. He did that for himself. He didn't do that for Willie. He did that for himself. Because if Willie wasn't here tomorrow, Rick Swann wouldn't care. Rick Swann and Willie Mack are just like everybody else in this industry. The same people that when I was at my lowest point, they laughed. And when I cried, they laughed. And they laughed. And they laughed. And they laughed. Who's laughing now?
And then there's Swan beats him up after. Or jumps
Other
him.
that was an excellent promo.
Wasn't it?
Like, there was a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of truth. And I'm not just talking about him having the seizure. I'm talking about even how he opened it up where, you know, everyone's all nice and smiles, but they're willing to stab you in the back.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, and that's...
I mean, and that's no secret.
Well, no, and that's... I mean, it's a competitive business. People want to say it's not, or, oh, everyone's all friends. That's... There's a difference between being in the opening of the card and the main event of the card. So it's very competitive, and people will stomp on you to get there.
What's Scott Hall saying?
I could rather have friends or money. Or
it's not called...
Oh, show business. That's called friend business. It's called show business.
Exactly.
And
but no, that was fantastic. Like, that was great. He's been on fire since he came back, or he appeared on Impact.
Those are the promos like that make me interested in watching him.
Well, yeah, it makes me interested in watching Impact.
Exactly.
Like, I'm strongly thinking about subscribing to the Fight Network just so I can watch Impact on time so I could talk about it more. Because of stuff like that. Now, if I do that and I find more of this crazy, weird whatever, I'll unsubscribe from that.
I think they've dialed that back.
I think they have too, because last time I watched Impact, I enjoyed it. We had this conversation.
But, I mean, promos like that, the best promos have a degree of truth to them.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you could feel what he said, because he's been through a lot in, like, 3 years. He had substance abuse issues. He did have that seizure at a show. He, he's had a lot of ups and downs. He's still young. He looks fantastic. He looks like a monster in the ring. And I remember him being able to cut promos in WWE too. I just think that obviously he got into some issues there and it didn't really transpire. But man, what a talent. He looks like $1 million and he can talk. Man, I don't know what his long-term goals are, like with Impact. But I'd keep building this guy for sure.
Yeah,
because
I agree. People
know who he is. First of all, he was on WWE TV, so that's the first thing. The second thing, if you and I were in a arena and he walked through the curtain, you'd be like, wow. He'd stand out right away.
Yeah.
If you were in a restaurant, he walked in, you'd be like, holy crap. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I love the promo. I thought it was excellent. That's the kind of talent that Impact should target. Guys that were kind of known mid-card, didn't really get where they may have should have gotten, and try to build them from there and grow your brand with them, because that's the guy I would latch the card to right now.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's excellent.
Yeah, I thought you'd like that.
Oh yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it was good, really good. Even the production of it, like if you see the promo, like what he does when he screams, that he looks directly at the camera, and he's like, and he's got the I mean, that was, oh man, excellent, so good. All right, I don't really have anything else, so we could probably get into our main event for this week.
All right. So this past week, we had not one, but two documentaries dedicated to the Ultimate Warrior and the man behind the character. So Matt, I guess we can, we'll start with the A&E one, because that one was bigger. It covered a lot more of the Ultimate Warrior. Now, did you, before going into this, did you have any expectations of it?
On the A&E one?
On the A&E one.
I wasn't sure what I was going to get out of it. Because the A&E documentaries, while well produced, there's a couple things with them. They do have WWE involvement, which, depending on your point of view, can be good or bad. And all the A&E documentaries have different directors, producers. So there's a different person making all the current A&E documentaries. It's not one person. So I wasn't 100% sure where we're going with that. My expectation of it was, I hope that they have good people talking on it, and that they cover some of the more controversial moments of his career and life.
All right. Going into this, I honestly thought this was going to be a puff piece. Obviously, I thought they were going to touch on some things, but for the most part, I thought I was going to just paint him in some positive light and this and that, especially because I know this is the documentary that had his second wife, Dana Warrior, who we all know from WWE TV, as well as his children, Madigan and Indiana. So I was expecting a puff feast. While watching it, I was kind of enjoyed that it wasn't a puff piece, and that they went into moments that were controversial, and they did, say, hey, look, he wasn't all, face paint and tassels. I guess you could say not butterfly and rainbows, but so basically it's with these biographies. And I just want to mention also that this was the first A&E biography I actually got to watch, because I finally subscribed to the A&E channel so that I could watch this and go back, and I will go back and watch the rest one, because I really do want to talk about the Randy Savage one at some point. Yeah. I know you do as well. Yes. So, I mean, they start out and, they go into his childhood. They had a lot of good people they interviewed for this, and then they had a lot of questionable ones, but one of the good ones was that they actually had his mom.
I know. I was thinking that too. I'm like, because you wouldn't think, I don't know, maybe it's just how I think, like, it's like, how old would his mother be?
Yeah. And I didn't think she would be alive, to be honest. You don't think of that, right?
Well, I mean, he died in his 50s, so
I don't know.
I guess it depends how. Anyway, I know exactly what you mean. But no, I like that. They had like his early years, like her. They had like his one of his friends. They had his coach in high school. I like the footage early on. Like they showed like where he lived, like the town he grew up in. Like he grew up in like a small rural town in Indiana. It was Crawfordsville, Indiana. So I mean, the guy that's larger than life grew up in a very humble kind of area. Like there's no glitz and glamour with where he grew up in.
Yeah. Now, when he was like, I think it was like when he was like 10 or 12, his father left.
Yes.
And I don't know if we mentioned, but he had, 3 other siblings?
Yeah.
So his father left, and they didn't say on this one, but on the Dark Side of the Ring, they said that his father was sleeping with the neighbor, cheating or whatever with the neighbor, and ended up leaving. This was, in my opinion, after watching both documentaries, a pivotal moment in Jim Hellwig's life.
Yes.
I think this was the thing, and this is very important. I think this fact, I think this really changed the course of his life. I think this was what drove him to become, to be able to become the Ultimate Warrior. And I also think that this was also what caused a lot of his downfall and the stuff where he would kind of, if you will, self-destruct later on.
Yeah. I think people probably realize it more now than they did before. But these kind of incidences when you're a kid really do affect you.
Yeah. I mean, did you know your father growing up? Not to get all impersonal. Okay, no. Yeah, and I didn't know mine either, right? So we were both raised with a father. Now, this is a different circumstance because his father was in his life and his father left and had little to do with him afterwards. This came to the point where he was almost had to grow up really fast.
Right. I mean, that's a big life change, right? Like, he's 12, he's used to his household, and it's upside down.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he was the oldest or not. I don't know if they mentioned that. But I can see where he's, trying to grow up more quickly than he should.
Yeah. So, he didn't have a lot now because one household or income family and having 3 other siblings and that, so he did not have a lot, and he was kind of a scrawny kid, so it kind of drew him to the weight room and working out. And as he says, like, he started noticing changes in his body and realizing, hey, I can transform my body, what else can I do? And this led him working out with his coach in high school, right?
Yeah.
So eventually he went into bodybuilding, and he did some local show or did bodybuilding, and then he ended up moving to Atlanta because he thought he'd get more exposure there.
Well, I think they had a house or something like there was other bodybuilders there he could train with or something. Like that.
No, that was in California.
It's California? Okay.
Yes, because eventually after Atlanta, he moved to California. But I think it was in Atlanta that maybe it was in California. It was either California or Atlanta where he met his first wife, whose name was...
Sherry,
yes. Now
but that's more the dark side.
This is where, that's the Dark Side of the Ring part. Because the Dark Side of the Ring mostly covered from this to his run up in WWF until like 1992.
Right.
So I guess we can probably like talk a little bit about both of them at this point.
Sure.
We can go in and out of both of them.
Sure.
So yeah, he met Sherry at this point, and something about he got an offer, or he moved to Gold's Gym. Someone saw him, and he moved to Gold's Gym to live in a house, and that's where he met Sting. And he started working out there, and then he kind of left. I don't know exactly what happened. But then something happened, and they were going to assemble a team, the guy that owns Gold's Fitness, or a wrestling team, or to send out promos or whatever.
They skipped what happened there.
Okay, so
because the guy that put this team together was Rick Bassman.
Oh, it was Rick Bassman.
Yes. So he had like 4 guys. They didn't really talk about this, but like he got 4 guys, and they called them Power Team USA, which I don't think they discussed on there. And then they sent the promo pics out. Like he was gonna have this group of bodybuilders that he was gonna use to like in the wrestling world. They were like a big team of bodybuilders that were all gonna be wrestlers. So those promo pics you see where there's like the 4 guys, and they're on the left or whatever. Like Rick Bassman's in the front. So and Rick Bassman, people don't know, ran that, was it UWF in California that ended up having Samoa Joe and John Cena and all those guys.
Yes.
Like he was the guy that put that together.
And okay, that makes sense. So they sent it to a bunch of places, but who was it? Was it UWF? Was it Bill Watts that saw it first?
No, it was Memphis.
Oh, Memphis. Yes, that's right. So Memphis saw it, and Jerry Jarrett was like, send me, I can only take 2 guys. And he pretty much picked out Warrior and Sting.
Yep.
And then, so they went to Memphis.
Yeah. They went there, and they were called the Freedom Fighters.
Yes.
And they didn't stay long. They were really green. I think they even worked with like Lawler and Dundee and like they worked with the top guys. I don't think they didn't get along. They were moving along very quickly there.
Then they moved. Did they?
They went to UWF after.
UWF.
Yeah.
And that's where they put on paint, right?
Yes. So they did like the mascara. Like that was a cool look, actually. The videos and stuff they did for them there were really, for the time, were pretty cool looking. It's dark. They looked demonic working out. Essentially, they were the Road Warriors, or like a play on the Road Warriors, the Blade Runners.
Yes. And so I'm having trouble here.
So what happened? What I remember.
You're better at doing this.
All right, that's all right. So there was an issue there where Warrior, him and Sting there was an issue with Warrior with the Office, and he wanted more out of what he was getting. They didn't see it, so he was going to quit. But they weren't going to pay them unless they made their promised dates. So Sting kept his commitment, made the dates, and then Warrior was not happy that Sting kind of betrayed him in his mind, and they had their falling out there. So Sting stayed in the UWF, and then which ended up getting bought by Jim Crockett. He became a big star in the NWA, and Warrior left, and he went to World Class.
Yes, and there, I know what happened here. That's where he became the Dingle Warrior.
Right.
Now
sorry.
Okay. No, you go ahead. I just want to hear what you say.
The thing that was interesting was when they were talking about the name, the Dingle Warrior.
Because this is what I want to talk about. So you say what you guys say, because
it's just
makes sense.
There's just some discrepancy on how the name came to be.
So, what did they say in? Okay, continue.
A&E. They had a clip of Warrior from the last documentary he was in with WWE, where he said that it was named after somebody's dog.
Yes.
Then the Dark Side documentary, I think they said Gary Hart came up with it. I think, but yeah. I've heard before that it was Gary Hart's idea. So no one really knows, I guess, where it came from. Not that I'd be really proud of that name, to be honest with you. But
I have a theory of why they use Dingle.
Go ahead.
when I say dingo, what comes to your mind?
Australia.
Not only that, what is there anything else?
Like a kangaroo?
No. So in the 80s, in 1980, in fact, there's a huge popular thing that happened where a woman in Australia went camping with her 2-month-old daughter, and her daughter went missing. And when she was being interviewed or asked about it, she's like, a dingo ate my baby, in her Australian accent. Don't mean to offend anyone, but it became really big because there's a huge pop culture, and that was a big thing in the 80s where people would be like, a dingo ate my baby.
Wasn't that was in Crocodile Dundee?
But this was an actual news thing.
Yeah, but
I mean, it might have been in Crocodile Dundee,
I think it was in the movie. But
okay, so maybe it's derived from there, because what happened was it was so big, right? And I think she ended up being like going to jail because they thought she killed her baby, and they thought she was making up this alibi that a dingo came and took her baby and that she was crazy. Follow me?
Yeah.
Want to hear an interest? So in the 80s, it was a popular thing, right?
Yeah.
The whole dingo thing, right? So I think that's where it kind of derived from. But I just want to follow up my story because I found this interesting. It was actually my wife that gave me the Iggy on this one. In 2012, locals were like, they didn't give up on this, and they actually did a search, and they went into a cave, and a dingo cave, and they found bones. And lo and behold, it was the bones of that woman's 2-year-old daughter or baby, or 2-week-old baby, or whatever it was. So she was actually telling the truth the entire time.
Interesting.
But yeah, I don't know. I just found that interesting because that's part of pop culture. And because of it being part of pop culture, especially in the 80s, dingo was a popular. It wasn't like now, like you don't really hear dingo unless like it's an Australian dog or whatever, right? But in North America, it was more, a little bit more commonplace because of that.
Looks like that happened in 1980.
Yes, that's what I said. And
they coined it in the movie Evil Angels. So maybe I didn't have it they did it. Well, it's definitely pop culture because it's in like almost every show. Maybe it wasn't Crocodile Dundee.
Yeah, but it was a pretty common. Like, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
that's why I'm saying, like, it's not like they pulled this term out of thin air.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's different origins of it. I think I even heard today on a podcast that Gary Hart may have been under the influence of narcotics and came up with it. I don't know.
Well, see, I bet Gary Hart did come up with it because he's very intelligent and he would use something from pop culture.
I could see that. Now, the one interesting part with that is where they build him from. Did you catch that?
No.
They build him from the Dingo Warrior. They listed him from Queens, New York.
Queens, New York.
Queens.
Okay.
So talk about some confusion with this character. So there was some, and I really can't tell you, like, I've not really watched any Dingo Warrior in World Class. I've seen like the little clips of him before. I know he was both a babyface and a heel in the territory. Obviously when he was with Gary Hart, he's a heel. But he was a babyface as well because he was kind of aligned with the Von Erichs. Which makes sense. I mean, his build would be very similar to Kerry Von Erich. They were very, very similar in size. So he came in, I believe, not long after Kerry Von Erich got in a motorcycle crash that took his foot. So, I mean, he comes in, he kind of looks like Kerry. So I'm sure they had big plans for him in World Class. But yeah, there wasn't really much else on the World Class stuff. They didn't he kind of had this reoccurring thing with these territories is he didn't have very long stays.
Yeah.
Because Continental, he went there in 85, he's out in 86. UWF, he's there in 86. In World Class, he's there 86 to 87. So this is his formative years in wrestling. Between 85 and 87, he's in 3 different territories.
Yeah. So after this, he moves to WWE.
And when he first got there, they were still calling him the Dingo Warrior. Well, not very long, but he was the Dingo Warrior when they got. Nobody knew what a Dingo Warrior was, obviously.
Yeah.
So he started the face paint in World Class, but WWE's really where he really started developing the Ultimate Warrior. But he, it seemed like in the beginning things were going pretty well for him. It didn't take long. He was over like pretty quick into his run.
Yeah, he was. And this is where a lot of Dark Side of the Ring is picked up. It for instance, when they're interviewing his first wife, Sherry, she shows a picture of him with a kid sitting in his lap.
Yeah.
And the kid has a bear, and the bear has his face paint, or it's a Chucky doll, or not Chucky.
My buddy.
And the My Buddy has his face painted like the Ultimate Warrior, this was
tremendous.
Such a cool picture.
Yes.
I don't know if I've seen this picture before this, and this is one of those pictures where it's like, oh, man, I don't know. I kind of like resonated with it.
That picture screamed 1980s to me.
It screamed my childhood to me.
Yeah, because I had a My Buddy actually, which is kind of funny.
So did I.
Yeah, and I mean that's pretty cool. So I wonder. I wish they would have told the story of that. Did he see the kid in the crowd with the My Buddy? What was that? Was really. Can you imagine if you're that kid? That'd be the coolest thing ever.
That would be.
I don't know what year that was, but I mean that's.
It looked very early on.
And you mentioned the pictures. She had a ton of pictures of him in his early days and as the Warrior backstage. She had a lot of context to him. You can even see in his face in the early pictures. He just looked different, like happy, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? As you go through it, he looks more. He looks more demonic, I guess. He's more Ultimate Warrior as he goes along.
Yeah. So basically, there's not too much. It heads right into the next big thing is WrestleMania 6 at this point. And this was an event that was highly covered by both Dark Side of the Ring and the A&E biography, because this was a pivotal point in his wrestling career, and this was probably the pinnacle of his life. Well, not of his life, but maybe the first half of his life. you know.
I would say it's the apex of his career.
There we go. So he wins the title from Hulk Hogan. Now, this is pretty interesting because I think it was the A&E biography. They had a clip from the fall, the Self-Destruction DVD.
Yes.
And Hogan was saying, after the match, when I was heading to the back and everyone was watching me instead of Ultimate Warrior, celebrating the ring and all that, I kind of knew that they made a big mistake.
I've heard that story from Hogan a few times, and I've never understood what he's saying on this, because when I've watched that match, people are going crazy for Warrior, absolutely insane, and he's like, people are watching me leave. He's on cart going down the aisle. I'm sure people are saying goodbye to him because that's what it seemed like. He was done. Like I never understood Hogan's stance on that. To me, it always came off like Hogan, I don't want to say was forced to pass the torch, but they were moving on from him. And I don't think Hogan's very political. Let's just say that. I have a feeling that he didn't particularly enjoy that.
So Ultimate Warrior goes to the back and he basically finds a spot in the building and he breaks down crying that he won the WWF Championship. This was pretty interesting because a lot of people's perspective is that Warrior did not care about wrestling. Now, I kind of agree with that. I don't think, because we know that his passion was not into wrestling. He got into it to make something out of himself.
Yeah.
I don't think he was crying because he was the WWF champion. I think he was like breaking down and crying because he accomplished it. Like he's come a long way. He knows that he's like the guy now, that he's the star of the show.
Yeah.
That he made his way, like, and that's not a bad thing. You know, there's a lot of people in wrestling business and a lot of people that became somebody in the wrestling business that did not have a passion for it growing up. That's okay. That is okay. You don't need that, you know?
Well, I think once he gets to this point, think about what because he joined the company, I think, 87, right? So This is 1990. He wins the title. So by that time, he's had feuds with Rick Rude. He had the big tour with Andre the Giant. He had the Intercontinental win over Honky Tonk Man ending his big run. He's Intercontinental champion going against Hogan and he had both titles when he left. No one had done any of that before.
No.
And he's a big deal. Like he is a massive deal at this point. Like there's not even you can't deny it. And you know, obviously that's, if you really think about it, he just had all these major highs in the business. And this is the culmination of it. He just beat the biggest star in the business. Like the fans just saw him pin Hogan in the middle of the ring, win the title, and left with the two major singles titles in the business at the time. I would say that's a pretty emotional thing to have happen.
For sure. Now, on the dark side of the ring, this was interesting because his wife Sherry, his ex-wife Sherry, said that Jim Hellwig left to go to WrestleMania 6, but Ultimate Warrior came home.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the most powerful sentence in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary.
I would agree.
She said that he wasn't, like, he came and, you know, things weren't quite the same. And at one point, she was calling him and he wouldn't answer and that. And she demanded to speak to him. So she called the hotel and he wouldn't pick up. So she called his room again for a second time. And I guess he finally picked up or something. And she was going to do a wellness check, or she did a wellness check with the hotel. So when he finally picked up, she was talking to him, but she heard a female voice on the other end. And that's when she realized that he was cheating on her. And this was the end of their marriage.
Yeah. So, you know, she was very emotional even talking about that.
Yes, she was. You could tell that she really cared about this, like, Jim Hellwig.
Because at first I was like, yeah, she's like crying over this. This is however many years ago. But as, you know, we got more into it. She obviously is very connected to him.
Yeah. So this was the end of his marriage. And we'll say this was, I believe it was like mid-90, 1990 to late 1990, somewhere around that point. Yep. And his title run wasn't going as well as they hoped. They had he feuded with like Rick Rude
I think
And-
they glossed over this a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think the A&E one, they discussed how they didn't really have anyone built for him. I think it was
Yes.
Meltzer, I think. And that is true. Because he already feuded with Rude before this. So it's basically rehashing a feud. Yeah, there was no big heels for him to work with at the time. I really hate the narrative that he wasn't this big draw and all, because I disagree with that. I just think who there was no one for him to really work with. Hogan, if you looked at Hogan in the 80s and through the 80s, monster heel nonstop, monster heel, they were all gone by this point.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's obviously weighing on him, though. He wins this title, and they're ready to move on from him.
Yeah. So in January of 1991, his divorce is getting finalized. He drops the title to Sergeant Slaughter at the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
And it was almost like he hit rock bottom. I think that's how he felt around this time.
It's a lot at once, is what I gather. And he's obviously kind of going through a transformation. One thing in wrestling, you get so into persona that's on TV that becomes you, and that he's clearly having an identity crisis. He's having a divorce. He's not going to make as much money because he's not on top. Although I'm sure he was still making good money, but there is a difference between, again, being on top and being in the middle.
Yeah. So I might gloss over something, so just let me know if I do. But from this came, was it SummerSlam? No, it was, Survivor Series? Where did he hold up Vince for money?
I think was that on Survivor Series?
The Survivor Series? So
no, it was SummerSlam.
SummerSlam. Okay, so what happened was he was growing frustrated, and he thought he should be paid on Hulk Hogan's level and be treated as an alternative to Hulk Hogan. So he was telling. Oh, actually, you know what? I missed one part of this. That's what it was. This was a important part. They did not mention this in the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, but they did mention this in the A&E, and that was, he was in an airport, and a kid came up to him and asked if he was the Ultimate Warrior, and he kind of went off on this kid.
Yep.
And apparently his kid's parents were connected somehow to WWE.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they were, I think someone worked for a television network or something.
Yeah. And this got back to Vince. So Vince made Vince make Ultimate Warrior issue a video apology.
Yeah, and this was tremendous, actually.
The fact that, kudos to A&E and WWE for providing the footage of this. Yeah.
That was very fascinating. Any of the promo stuff they showed on here was excellent. Because the stuff they showed kind of prior to this with him cutting promos, you could see how worked up he was. When they cut, it's like he's having a hard time coming back down. But this one, he's trying to get into it, and then he is cussing Vince out like crazy, saying that he shouldn't have to do this. Vince is telling him, kind of directing him what to do, and then he's like, Jim, it's a work. Just do the work.
Yeah, and you could tell Vince was growing frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tremendous, all that footage, the promo footage, the cut, the B-roll, that was probably my favorite part of the A&E documentary, because you never see that stuff.
No.
And to see Warrior, he
he does this promo, and then he's just like, he's deep breathing after, like he's trying to, like, you can see where he got really into it.
Yeah, because he did not feel like he owed this kid an apology because he feels like he didn't do anything.
Right. Even an Undertaker, I believe, because he was on there and said that he saw this. It couldn't believe it. So it definitely happened.
I believe this was probably the last straw because Ultimate Warrior penned a letter to Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
So I actually have the letter right here.
Yep.
I will read some of it.
Yep.
Okay. So this is Warrior's letter to Vince. Vince, writing this is a different approach in expressing my feelings about the things we discussed the last 2 days under the pressure of TV. Knowing that any second someone would be knocking on the door, etc., every other avenue we tried, via phone, face-to-face, myself still walking away with unanswered questions, always put off till a later date, always with the same result, no result. Writing sometimes allows a person to express feelings or say things that they don't come in conversation, such as we have. Some of the things will once again become repetitive. So what I've heard, in an essence, at least 1,000,000 times. I've tried to speak as a friend, but sometimes you don't hear. I've spoken as a professional, but the direction always gets changed. No, you never let me leave without a response, but the words you speak never have any definitives. My whole life for the last 5 years have had no room for anything but definitive. And then it lists like a little schedule. But you always had to have the best way of time. Time to say, stew things over, work them your way. So I have from day one different from others. I have been from day one different than others. I have sacrificed myself both in my personal life and physical well-being. The fairness you say you want everyone to have is unfair to me. I grew in 5 years to become what the Ultimate Warrior is today. Always questioning, but nevertheless taking time or taking him in the direction you wanted him to go at any particular time. Done what would and has taken over the 10, 15 years. So he keeps going. I'm just going to skim through this. Like, just keeps going on about a character who has shown ups and downs, emotions, and intense sense, blah, blah, blah. And then he says, a long-term plan change. At first, I was reluctant for what I believed were the right reasons. But once again, I went with what I knew I could believe in. Vince has never effed me. I dealt with what you thought was best, no matter what it cost to me. No matter what countless numbers of sleepless nights there were to come, no matter number of times I had to knock on your door with questions I should never have had. So he keeps going. I am reaching the conclusion. Okay. In reaching this conclusion, I asked for these things. You say $500,000 for WrestleMania is unfair. Then I say the last 8.5 years of not being compensated equally when I meant as much or more to the company was total bullspit. And most definitely unfair. I have sacrificed more than $500,000, more than $1 million, even more in monies that should have been paid to me, receiving equal compensation as Hulk. I paid my goddamn dues a long time ago. I need not pay anymore. I have given everything and never once has there been a knock on my effing door, whether the bullshit as a friend or help me through times you need trusting me to help you. Whatever. Jeez, this was a long letter.
Well,
okay, so these are his demands. I want $550,000 release from the monies allotted me to purchase my home. This will suffice as my WrestleMania 7 payoff, but let it be known that it is not fair. I meant as much or more to that show as Hulk. I deserve to be paid the same. This was the WrestleMania he worked Savage, right?
Say that again, sorry?
That was the WrestleMania 7 when he worked Savage, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So number 2, 4 days off every other time off period, except pay-per-view only. Number 3, I want the same pay cut as Hulk gets on all pay-per-views, Saturday Night Main Event, Friday Primetime, house shows, and proof as such. The pay cut applies to what Hulk has been paid with the relationship to past events, such as WrestleMania 5, 6, 7, i.e. when Hulk was top draw. Number 4, I want numbers and proof of monies done on 1-900 Hulk, and likewise same pay cut. Number 5, same pay cut from all forms of merchandise. And then he wraps it up by saying, because I've had to always knock on your door, words alone are not good enough. I understand Doug Sages is on vacation. Call him, take his days off away like you do to the boys and myself, and have it written. Every time I had to knock on your door upon leaving, I have always apologized. I no longer feel like I have any reason to apologize, therefore I will not. I have tried to speak to you as a friend, and maybe I don't have any qualities you required to seek me out as a friend. The videotape apology was icing on the cake. You see, as business, so whether you like it or not, I must do the same. Whether your decision I can and live with it. Till then, I remain home and with one who cares, Jim.
Yeah, that's a long letter. I like Vince's return letter.
Well, I'm about to pull that up right now. So this one's a lot shorter, okay?
Yeah.
So this is dated July 13th, 1991. See, I always thought he gave this letter to Warrior as Warrior was running out of the curtain at SummerSlam.
No.
Okay.
Oh, that was his release, I believe.
See, the way that I understood it on the A&E, and on both actually, was that he gave him this letter after. But anyway, July 13th, 1991. Dear Jim, this letter is in response to your facsimile to me of July 10th, 1991. Number 1, you will be paid an aggregate amount of $550,000 for your participation in WrestleMania 7. Number 2, with the exception of special events only, you will receive 4 days off every... Oh, see, so this letter that I'm reading is not Vince's response. This is Vince's response to the letter. So apparently, Vince gave him this letter.
Yeah.
And it was basically agreeing to his demands.
Yeah.
That's what I'm reading right now.
Well, I think there was
another letter. One sec.
Yeah.
So apparently Vince agreed to those. See, this did not come up in the documentaries. This was just like, it was mentioned that Vince would pay him, but I didn't know that Vince actually gave him a letter.
Yeah. So he gave him this letter, but then he had another letter when he released him.
Okay, I think I found it. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Opening it up. Okay, this letter is a little long, so I'm going to try and skim through it too, okay?
Yep.
All right. So this one is hand-delivered. It even says it on it, hand-delivered, August 26, 1991. Dear Jim, as you know, on September 23rd, 1987, you signed a booking contract with Titan Sports. At the time you signed the contract, you were a relatively obscure wrestler with an enthusiastic, professed desire to succeed. I therefore invented a substantial amount of time, money, and sincere energy to develop your talents as a person as a worldwide WWF wrestler, such that you have been able to be successful and achieve stardom status throughout the world. Unfortunately, it is now appear that the fame that you have obtained through the efforts of Titan Sports has gone to your head. Frankly, you have become impossible to work with and have completely forgotten your obligations to Titan and WWE fans, both ethically, professionally, and contractually. Although your contract provides you with substantial compensation over the past several months, you have expressed your continuing dissatisfaction with the amount of compensation which Titan has paid to you. despite the fact that Titan has paid you over $1.3 million during the past year. Your principal complaint apparently is that you have not compensated at the same rate as Hulk Hogan. Although Hulk is a living legend, is still much better known to the public, has wrestled longer, is the WWE champion, is in much greater demand for personal appearances, is a bigger star and draw at WWF events, is more dependable, and far more revered and respected by WWF fans and by the public at large. You have become a legend in your own mind. You are certainly entitled to your opinion. However, you are not entitled to vent your feelings by breaching and threatening to breach your contract. In particular, you have breached the contract by failing to appear at matches in which you were scheduled to wrestle without a legitimate excuse, including matches which were scheduled to be televised, failing to cooperate with our booking department, and being rude and abusive to WWF fans. See contract at paragraph 9. You have also threatened that unless I meet your demands that you're going to stay at home, not appearing at numerous events which Titan has booked for you, unless and until you were given all of the perks and pay of Hulk Hogan. Of course, you did not make your threat until Titan had spent tens of thousands of dollars to promote these events and your presence at them. Therefore, on July 9th, 1991, you threatened to stay at home, thereby not even appearing at Titan's major summer pay-per-view event, SummerSlam. I had no choice but to accede to your extravagant demands. Had I not agreed to your terms, both Titan and I would have, then Titan would have lost its public credibility and goodwill and have been gravely harmed with cable companies and WWF fans who paid for the pay-per-view fees for SummerSlam. This was a serious mistake on your part, pal. He didn't put pal. I added that. Your behavior has become unreliable and erratic. Which behavior is intolerable in the WWF? I mean, because Titan can no longer feel secure in knowing when or if you would appear at events for which you have already been booked. Is this a letter to Ultimate Warrior or Michael Punga? Titans had no alternative but to make every effort to cut its losses now and to mitigate against potential losses in the future. Consequently, Titan must now spend considerable amounts of time, expense, and energy to change the promotional or to the personal previously scheduled in the matches and cards, which are customarily. Sorry, this is like a typed letter that's been photocopied, so it's a little hard. Been booked, blah blah blah. I'm just going to skip through this part. This is all like legal, the mumble jumble of his contract. He's just pointing out to parts of the contract. Okay, this will wrap. If you would like to discuss this matter furthermore, please call my office. Otherwise, we will be in touch with you shortly before the end of the period to notify you of the date and place where you will be next scheduled to perform under the terms of the original contract. Very truly yours, Vincent K. McMahon, President. So there you go. Oh, wow. And then there's another one, a memorandum, which is addressed to all Titan personnel. And it says, please be advised that the Ultimate Warrior has been suspended for no less than 90 days due to unprofessional conduct. Thank you. So there you go.
So Warrior left after this.
Yes.
Now, the part on Dark Side that I thought was interesting was Jake Roberts talking about how he's supposed to be working with Warrior after this. And they had shot some stuff where he trapped him in that room with snakes and all that kind of stuff. Like, they were building to a feud with him and Warrior. And Vince told Jake he had to go talk to Warrior to get permission for him to work with him. And Jake's like, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes to talk to him. Warrior berates him. And then when Vince hands him the letter, Jake says he's right there at the curtain and sends Warrior home. And he said he looks at Jake and says, "You have the worst luck of anyone I've ever met." Because Jake was saying how this was going to be like a main event feud for him. Like he was going to make some big money working around the loop with Warrior. And that basically screwed the plans for him. So that was kind of a side story in that. So at this point, Warrior leaves the company. Now there's a lot of controversy going into that match, where I was surprised they included it on here, where because it was on the Self-Destruction DVD where Slaughter talks about, like, Hogan says, "Hey Shiki, move him into the corner here, and then you break his ankle."
Yes.
Like and I thought that was interesting. They put that in the A&E documentary because that ended up being a lawsuit when that DVD came out, the Self-Destruction DVD, and that was one of the big points in the lawsuit, that they were alleging they were going to assault him. So that was an interesting thing. But so and then Slaughter's like, Vince heard that, was like, no,
we don't need a lawsuit.
No need a lawsuit, pal. So there was so much going on at that one moment in time, and it goes to show you like how much one talent affects the show.
Yeah,
because Warrior's a huge name. If he didn't go out for that match, that would have ruined the main event. Him not continuing with the company after that ruins future plans. And it makes me wonder if, like, I know people would balk at this. Had this not gone down, I wonder if Warrior would have found his way back in that title picture again.
Interesting.
Because I wonder about it, because they're still booking him pretty strong. Because at this time, like, he's had some pretty big, he had some big feuds. Like, he retired Savage. He had the thing with The Undertaker. They're building up to the Jake stuff. The whole thing is they're building him pretty strong.
Yeah.
And then he's just gone.
Yep. He left. He came back, though, briefly.
Oh, yes.
So at WrestleMania 8, and he was in the A&E documentary, they mentioned he was notably smaller because of the lawsuit going on with Titan Sports and the steroid scandal.
Yes.
So he came back. I mean, but like there wasn't much that happened during his comeback. The interesting thing about this, so he came back at WrestleMania and he left at Survivor Series, and every time he had to take a drug test, he had to fill out what other prescription pills he was on.
Yes.
So the first one, it was just Motrin. Pretty simple, over-the-counter, aspirin, whatever, right?
Yep.
Second one, it was like 2 things. Third one, it was like 4 or 5 things. And then it continued to grow. And then by the end of it, like the whole space was written. And as well as they admitted that he failed a numerous drug tests, steroid tests. So that was just an interesting, like near the end, he needed like medicine to help him sleep, anxiety, all this other stuff. So it was, what that tells me is either like he wasn't like truthful the entire time of all the stuff he was taking, or that he really couldn't take the pressure of being in the spotlight.
Yeah, he's starting to crack at this time. Being on the road. And, I was really bummed out. They didn't discuss, like, the Warrior dying rumor at this point.
But they kind of mentioned why he looked so different.
Yeah, but I understand that. But at the same time, like, he was noticeably smaller.
Yeah.
But then, when he leaves again, like how I understand how he left, and then there's different stories on this. He had ordered some growth hormone, and the guy that sent it to him got busted, and he told Vince about it, and they let him go. And I don't think they had that on there, but that's been on other documentaries with Warrior. So, I don't know. I was a little confused on this part.
So now he's gone, and during this time, there's not really much is said. He tries to open up a wrestling school.
That's when he came back.
I thought he tried to do it just before he came back.
It's 96, wasn't it?
Yeah, so like around that time, he opened up a wrestling school. He started a comic book, and around this time, or he opened up a gym. That's what he did in this time, before he came back.
Right.
He opened up a gym, and that's when he met his current wife, Dana Warrior, or Dana, because she was handing in a resume to become an aerobics instructor. So they started dating around this time and everything like that. Now, also around this time, because he had a gym, Sherry was working out there.
Yeah.
And they discussed this on Dark Side of the Ring. So on the first one, they just kind of mentioned Sherry, but on this, or so on the Dark Side of the Ring, or on the A&E, sorry, they mentioned Sherry, but on the Dark Side of the Ring, it was more about Sherry. And she's like, they started, talking, and they were in each other's lives, and they were both like in good spots. He was dating, she was dating.
Yep.
And they were friends. They were able to still, talk and communicate and be there for each other. But then she got pregnant, and it became a little more where, maybe their partners might not agree with them talking anymore. So, they basically mutually agreed to just not speak to each other and just go in their own different direction. And she said that was the last she's ever seen of Jim Hellwig.
That part was pretty interesting, because that showed a really human side of Warrior.
Yeah.
Right, because, a lot of the narrative on him is he doesn't care about people or whatever, but she talks like they had a real connection, even when they were broken up. Like, she's apologizing to her for everything he's done, and they're going their separate ways, and that's the last time they ever saw each other or talked to each other. And, there's certain things in this that really humanize him, and I think she did a really good job with that.
Yeah, I agree. One part that another important part that we actually skipped over at this point in time, is that he legally changed his name to Warrior.
Yes.
So
that was to circumvent the copyright issue.
Yeah.
It is. I always found that interesting years later, reading about the Ultimate Warrior, that his legal name is Warrior. And I don't know, it's like his name is Warrior, but then his family's last name is Warrior. So does he have a first name? Does he have a last name?
I think his only name is Warrior. I think it's kind of like Cher.
I guess.
I always thought it was like Jim Warrior, but then when I saw the paper, it was like, no, it's just Warrior. All right.
Yeah, and that was like a huge lawsuit. I don't think did they get into the lawsuit with that part? I can't remember.
No, I don't remember.
Because I think, if I remember correctly from the self-destruction DVD, it's like a $6 million lawsuit.
Yeah. They kind of just, I believe, glossed over it, and then they were like, oh, they're bringing Warrior back for WrestleMania 12 in 1996. And then they kind of just glossed over this, saying A&E didn't really, they just went from him coming back to him leaving quickly. Dark Side of the Ring said, yeah, he came back, and it wasn't the same. All the fans that remembered him when they were, in 1991, 1992, they grew up, and they kind of grew away from the Ultimate Warrior.
What did you think of Warrior 96 as a fan?
Okay, so let's put this in perspective. I was 11, 12.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool. Ultimate Warrior coming back. The build up, okay? So cool. WrestleMania 12, yeah, he squashes Triple H, he just mows him over. Cool. But as it got into it,
yeah,
I was like, I remember watching, or not, I didn't watch the pay-per-view, but I saw it after he had a match with Goldust and he's sitting in the director's chair smoking the cigar or whatever, mocking or whatever. And he came out in the part where he came out wearing a baseball cap because
that was with Lawler.
Yeah, with Lawler. This is different instances. Yeah, with Lawler. And then all I know, so he was I don't know, he wasn't the guy. I never even expected him to be a champion, but he wasn't he didn't make a big splash. He wasn't he just kind of settled into the middle card, right? But
I think
he's bigger than.
I think the show changed by that time. It's the different feel of the show.
Yeah.
And he looked different. And I don't know. I almost think that people still remembered him. It's not like he didn't get a reaction. I don't know. He didn't have as much of that larger than life persona at that point.
Yeah.
The show was different. It's Raw. It's every week. So
his gear was cool.
Yeah. It's easy to overexpose him at that point, I think. He would have been better as a special attraction.
You gotta remember, you're seeing him almost on a weekly basis sometimes.
Yeah, no, I remember he came back and I remember all the kids I knew were oh man, Ultimate Warrior's back, because he was a big deal. But like I said, the show's different. Cause from 92 to 96, you don't realize how much stuff's changed just in the company. The people, the talent, it's all different. It's completely different. The way the show looks is different. The pay-per-views are different. Now they, used to be syndicated TV. Now they're live every week. Promos are different. The way things are shot, it's a totally different thing. And I don't think it was either he didn't adapt to it, or the show couldn't adapt to him. One of the two.
So he ended up no-showing a couple of events because his father passed away, and the way that Vince looked at it, this was on the A&E, is that as far as he knew, Warrior didn't talk to his dad for 10 or 12 years, and he couldn't even care less about him. And because of that, he's missing these dates, and he has no room for anyone that is basically just phoning in a day off, just, kind of using it as an excuse to miss dates. That's how Vince saw it. So Warrior was gone from WWE again.
We skipped over one thing that I thought that was pretty funny, that I always get a kick out of, was the Distrucity.
Oh yes, they didn't mention this in the A&E, but on the Dark Side of the Ring they did.
Oh man, so Warriors University, which is tremendous. He's gonna have his wrestling school, and he has all these philosophies for people, and he had a word called Distrucity. Now I've heard Cornette and Pritchard and these guys, JR, talk about it in the past. I think JR had the line of the show on Dark Side, and he goes, I bet people are asking themselves at home, what the F is Distrucity? And I can't remember the actual meaning of it, but it's ridiculous. That they had to meet with Warrior about his return, and Warrior was pitching them on his school, the comic book, and all these philosophies. So it's Vince, JR, Cornette, and Pritchard all sitting there listening to Warrior tell them about Distrucity, which I think would have been, if there was a camera for this,
Oh my gosh.
That would be like the greatest. That would be the greatest B-roll footage of all time.
Yes.
And I remember a few years ago, Pritchard was on Cornette's podcast, and they were talking about it. And Bruce was like, Vince would always, when they were trying to pitch his stuff, Vince was like, "That's true, city pal." It just shows you how into the Warrior thing he has gotten at this point.
So both documentaries just skip over his WCW run.
Which, I just want to say something on that. If they want to skip over, it's fine. But I don't see why you would have Bischoff on the dark side of the ring if you didn't talk about WCW.
Yeah. Well, as far as I can probably answer that one. They go and, they look at all the shows that they're doing. That,
I know.
Like, hey, you had contact with Ultimate Warrior, so do you want,
I know, but it's a different time period. It's just, I don't know.
I completely understand what you're saying.
WCW, I know it's probably forgettable for a lot of people. And they did cover it on the Self-Destruction DVD. But his debut in that promo with Hogan is, if you have an hour to watch it, you'll never forget it. Because it was long.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Very long. So we go into his wrestling career is basically done at this point. So we go into his political career.
Yes.
Now, it's funny because there's not too much I want to say. Like the major point of this was when he was speaking at, what was it, University of Georgia or something like that? Connecticut, that's what it was. And he made some comments about homophobic comments and racial comments. Now, it was funny because before this, they were like, obviously it was getting protested out and they were handing out flyers, and one of the students went up to him and they're like, just to know what you're walking into. And so he went out there and it was probably hostile. Well, it was hostile towards him, which, I mean, in all due respect to those people, like, yeah, like if he's, as it would be, right, with someone talking of these political views that go against a lot of what that are controversial, right?
Yeah.
But this became a very hot subject.
Yeah, I remember when this went down at the time. I don't know, like I remember watching it like during that time period because it was online, and this is what 2005, 5ish, yeah,
somewhere around there.
Because I hadn't heard anything from the Warrior in years, and I watched that particular one online, and I couldn't believe that he was doing a speaking tour talking like that. And they when they addressed it on A&E, Dana Warrior said that he knew he made a mistake with that, but they asked her about the views, and she said it was because he was into talk radio listening to Rush Limbaugh, which was an interesting comment. But then on, I think it was Dark Side, they had a clip of him saying his wife got him into that conservative frame of mind. So it's a very, very, I don't know, that was a very polarizing part of the show. Now I think it was it Dark? I mean, it was no, for sure it was Dark Side. They got into some of his videos he would make online, talking about various people, which I remember that very well because he had a video series called Karma's Coming to Collect, and it was all about Hulk Hogan, and that was like a 4-part YouTube series, and he had several of these. And then they also had, I don't know if they talked about a Dark Side. Do you remember his website?
Not barely.
I remember it's called Warrior's Machete.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I completely don't remember this.
So he had a blog. He had a website with a blog, and they showed it a little bit on Dark Side. And I remember checking the site out, and he had a lot of opinions on obviously politics and sexuality and lots of stuff. And he had a lot of disparaging comments on people in the wrestling business, like a lot. And I was listening to Dark Side of the podcast earlier, and they were talking about going through like these old blogs. The website's down, but you can access the blogs. And Evan Husney said that he did a search on one page and he's seen the same homophobic slur on one of the articles 52 times.
Wow.
Yeah. So now I know there wasn't enough time in the show to go through all that stuff, but he had a lot of stuff like that. He had comments on Martin Luther King that I don't think were accurate. He had some disparaging comments on Heath Ledger, who because of his role in what was that movie?
Brokeback Mountain.
Brokeback Mountain. He had stuff like that. I think the worst comment, and I know no one touched this, and I know we're getting off a little bit, was he had some comments on Bobby Heenan when Bobby Heenan got cancer diagnosis, talking about basically making fun of Heenan and how he deserved what he was getting. So there was some interesting stuff on this blog, and legend has it that Dana took this website down after he passed away. So they showed it on Dark Side. They didn't have a ton on it. I think they had more clips of his YouTube stuff, which was anything from talking about Hogan being a swinger with his wife to Kevin Nash challenging him to a fight. Just lots. There is a lot of stuff on Warrior Online from like the mid to late 2000s.
So after this, we basically go into the Hall of Fame where he's being inducted, and it's more at this point, a lot of people like he's at peace. He's a different kind of guy, and we see like especially in the A&E documentary of him going and trying to make amends with Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter, and then in the Dark Side documentary, we have Jake the Snake telling a story of how he was there and he had a bunch of rolled up quarters in his hand because he was going to take out the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
And kind of get revenge. And he was waiting for Warrior, and, you know, Warrior was like with like behind closed doors of whatever, and he's waiting and he's getting ready and all that. And then he feels a tap on his back. He turns around and it's Warrior, and Warrior's like, look, you know, I'm sorry for whatever I've done, for all the stuff, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You know, let's put it past us and move on. And I love you and all this stuff. And Jake basically says everything that he felt towards Warrior went out the window at that moment. And
that was interesting. That he's gonna dock him out with a roll of quarters at the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to skip ahead a bit because the Dark Side of the Ring then goes into, you know, Warrior passing away and that. But at the very end, the last thing you see on the Dark Side of the Ring is Jake the Snake saying, you know, rest in peace.
Yeah.
Like sincerely saying, you know, rest in peace. So, yeah, we go through the Hall of Fame. Next night on Raw, and in the Dark Side of the Ring, they really mentioned, like, he did not look good. And they showed footage.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking probably he wasn't. And the thing is, though, is you got to remember, he was wearing like a suit, and then on top of that, a heavy trench coat. So and you're in an arena, so under all these lights. So he was probably like really hot at that moment too, right?
Yeah.
So maybe he wasn't feeling well, or he did look off. It's hard to tell whether it was that or if he was overheated. But the A&E goes in where, you know, that happens, and then they're leaving, to go somewhere the next morning. They were going to go on vacation. Dana Warrior and his 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he says to her, I don't feel well. And she was like, oh, what do you want me to get for you? And he's like, no, I need to go to the hospital. And she knew at that point that things were serious. So I don't know if she had someone watch the kids or whatever, but they went out the door and like he collapsed. She said it was like a large oak just falling and she could do nothing. So they go to the hospital and they pronounce that he's dead.
Yeah.
Through both documentaries, they do mention that like his dad and his dad's dad and like a lot of the Hellwig men pass away at about age 50 from heart attacks. So they alluded that maybe he knew like, it was a ticking time bomb and that he better just live life the best he can and get the most out of it,
Yeah. That stuff's sad. I mean, I think the thing with the A&E documentary, they had like his kids were on it.
Yeah, we didn't really talk much about them, but if you want to go into a minute, because it was interesting because it opened up with both his kids and it ended with both of his kids. The one is into ballet and then the other one's into kickboxing.
Yeah. And
he says it brings her closer to her dad.
Yeah, and they were talking about what was the beginning? I think they were saying always believe. I think that's what he always made them say that.
Yes.
So I mean that stuff's always sad, because he's obviously a very polarizing person. It's controversial, but at the end of the day, he still has kids, and obviously he has a family. It's obviously very hard on them, and the thing is, they did a good job humanizing him, and I think the thing to remember, because obviously there's a lot of controversial things in his life, but I think what it did was both documentaries kind of showed you that people are complex. There's a lot of complexities with people, and the reason why there's complexities with people, and are they able to get past those complexities? How do you deal with them? How do people view you? And he was a different person altogether. There's no, I mean, in one sense he exhibits something that's larger than life, and in another sense he's demonstrating things that are very hurtful and hateful and painful for people. And then it's like, how did he come out of that at the end? Like, he's making peace with a lot of the people that he had heat with. So he's all over the place, and people are complex and they're not perfect, but he's a very controversial figure, and you try to separate the persona from the person, but then there's a big overlap between the two. So you could almost do a whole feature 2-hour documentary on the Warrior, because I think there's so much stuff you could get into with him.
I really honestly believe, while watching both of these, that there's a lot of underlying psychological issues that he has had since he was a child, like whether it be like before his dad left or around when. I really think it was around when his dad left. A lot of it developed. I think, and here's the thing, right? Like, it happens to all of us. We all have something that drives us. I think there was a lot of issues there that, if some of them were addressed, or if he had somebody to help him address those issues, we would be telling a different story of the Ultimate Warrior, per se. And I mean, you really think about it. His wrestling career was not long. If you take it and uninterrupted, it was like not long at all. I think you can jam it all within like, a couple, like maybe like 6-7 years, if that, which is remarkable considering the lasting impression he has had on so many people and on a generation of what that character and what he was able to do with it, because he got it over initially in World Class, in my opinion. That's where it was born, you know, and all WWE did was magnify it, and it became something, and it became huge. And I think a lot of people discredit that character and that persona because of the stuff that happened later down the road with Jim Hellwig, right? But you separate that, and the Ultimate Warrior character is timeless. And I think that's what WWE has tried to capitalize on now. Like, that's what they focus on now, is more of the character. Like, you know, it's funny, a lot of this merchandise you see that is of the Ultimate Warrior, a lot of it is like his face paint that's what it is. Like, even pictures, he might be in black and gray or white, but his face paint's in color, you know, or if they're selling something, it's his face paint. So they really are trying to push the character as opposed to like actually the man that portrayed the character, which is smart, because that's what, you know, fans remember. He was a larger than life cartoon character. So
yeah,
I think maybe later in his life, towards the later end, I think he's finally found peace, like found what his niche, especially I think a lot had to do with when his daughters were older, as they got older, and he was able to be a father and be that, not be absent and not run away like his dad did, or he feels like, you know, I feel like that brought a lot of peace to him, to be there day in and day out for his children. And I don't know, that's the thing, like I'll always like the character of the Ultimate Warrior. Like, I don't care what anyone says. Yeah, he was amazing. He was like a superhero. He was a Batman when I was a kid, you know. And I always look at that time frame whenever I think of the Ultimate Warrior. I don't think about, to me, the Ultimate Warrior is not those political tours, because that wasn't the Ultimate Warrior to me. To me, the Ultimate Warrior wasn't holding Vince up for money, because I did not know that. You know, it wasn't getting fired for steroids. To me, the Ultimate Warrior was the guy that came in and beat up guys and squashed them and just ran out, and he was just larger than life. And, you know, like, you know what's funny? Everyone pokes fun at his promos because they don't make sense. Did they have to make sense?
No.
I knew it. I didn't care what he was saying. When I was a kid, I picked out what was the important parts. You know, he's going to beat this guy, the Ultimate Warrior. I'm the ultimate little warrior. You know, like, I got the bullet points, and to me, that's what was more important than the whole spiel. I think people are too promo driven nowadays that they forget, like, you don't need to. Some guys don't need that. They don't need a huge dialogue, right? They don't need to cut a huge Matt Pepper-like dialogue to get over. They just need to keep it simple and straight and to the point, like Derek.
So just to kind of talk about some closing thoughts on both shows. I thought both did a good job. My gripes with them aren't that big. I think they told a good story. The A&E one, I wish they could have had more wrestlers on there talking. I think they had a lot of marks on there, for lack of better terms, because a lot of it was like Sam Roberts and what's that other guy's name? Peter Rosenberg and Ron Funches. Like, you might as well just had you and I on there.
I don't think we're as entertaining as Ron Funches.
Well, I guess that depends on what you consider entertaining. But I'm just saying, like, they didn't really add anything for me for that. But one of the funniest things was I like when they were talking to Vince, and they were like, "Did you consider him a son?" And Vince goes, "No." He goes, "I have a son." It's like, what? So, but I was like, Shane talked about how they have Warrior over for supper. Like he was close with the McMahons, which I thought was interesting. I just wish they had more people that he worked with. But I have a feeling they probably didn't want to go too far into that because they might have buried him on that A&E show. The Dark Side one, I was surprised, even with the people on the show, I thought would have been a little harder on Warrior too. And they were, but I mean, the star of that show was Sherry. I thought she was the best part of that Dark Side show.
Yes.
And really humanized him. If you could combine those two together as documentaries, it probably would have been like the greatest wrestling documentary I've seen. But I don't think you could tell the story of Warrior in the time that they had. There's so many more things they could have went down. But for what they had, I would say it was... I liked both. I thought they were excellent, but I think I liked the A&E one just a little bit more.
You know, my biggest surprise coming out of this is that it wasn't a sort of puff piece, and that Dark Side of the Ring wasn't a smear campaign. Suspected that, like I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And because of that, I thought that was actually good on both parts, because, you know, they both needed to be like that, because everyone was expecting that, you know. I thought they were both really good. I thought the Dark Side of the Ring one lacked a lot of people being interviewed.
Yeah.
Like you said, Bischoff was interviewed. It's like, but then again, gotta remember the budget, the production and everything, like, and what each, you know, like this is the pandemic era, right? Or era. So like they can't really just like get everyone on, you know, there's precautions, blah, 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 travel, blah, 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 right? So I understand that, but I really enjoyed both.
Goodbye and good night.